Welcome to More Than Dentistry, where your hosts Evert and Waldo discuss life, dentistry, and everything in between with dentists around the world.
Hello and welcome to the More Than Dentistry podcast.
Okay, cool. This is the More Than Dentistry podcast, and we're talking to two friends of mine, Handre and Bernard Vogt from Cape Town, or Bernard from Stellenbosch. Do you guys want to introduce yourself, Bernard? Go and tell the audience who you are.
I'm here for the surf, stand for the podcast. And it's good to be with mates who we met when we were 18. Eh?
Yeah, we all... Dip Dog, you live on the show. Welcome.
Right, it's good to speak to you again, Evert.
Yeah,
what are we talking about? Financial advice.
We're talking financial advice. You've kind of jumped on. We just introduced everyone on the show. Dav hasn't even introduced himself, so just hang on the call there. We're going to speak to you now, Dips. Dav, just tell the people who you are.
Yeah, my name's Handre, all the way from Bloemfontein in the Free State. I met Evert at Stellenbosch University and popped by for the weekend to do a bit of surfing.
There we go.
And Dwayne Dippenard, the Mexican Dippenard, just phoned in as well. Dwayne, do you want to introduce yourself quickly as well?
So I'm a bit confused. I thought I was just calling you. What am I speaking on here?
Dips, on the podcast, I told you we're going to phone you for some financial advice, but you phoned while we were recording, so you can just introduce yourself. You're speaking to a bunch of dentists all around the world. Tell them who you are and what your expertise are.
Jeez, what is my expertise? That's a tough one. But I'm Dwayne. I live in Johannesburg and I invest in financial markets. That's me. In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Okay, Dips, how was your day? What did you do today?
Yeah, it was a very relaxed day. We're busy doing a building here. A bit of admin. We're under lockdown, so nothing too exciting, Evert.
Did you go for a run?
No, I didn't go for a run, but
Okay.
I played. Yeah.
We've got a run in a month's time, the 1,000-pound run. So I hope you're ready.
No, I'm not very worried about that. I don't need to practice for that run. I'm running against you, that boy.
Listen, but is this the same Dwayne that you mentioned earlier inspired you to start training again?
Yeah, he fat shamed me, was it about 3
Jeez.
months ago? Fat shamed me quite a bit. Is he off the line now? Heel draai knopje drukken. Okay, let's find the back. Okay, Dwayne, Handre, let's get going.
Okay.
Handre, we all we're a bunch of friends that study together at Stellenbosch, and we all on a WhatsApp group together, and we all drink wine together, and we all go away once a year for a long weekend. So we keep in contact quite a lot, and Dav was recently very optimistic about South Africa, and he kind of got us all motivated again to be excited about living in South Africa. So I want you to exaggerate on that a little bit. Dips, you're back online. What happened? Why are you so slow? Alright, there you are. Just say again. Dips, you're busy screwing up our podcast here because you keep on phoning and going away.
Okay, well, let's
Are you ready to give us your speech for young dentists on investments? Dwayne is an investment expert, and he wants to give us a 30-second talk on how to invest your money when starting a new business.
yes, to call me an investment expert, a big call, Evert. I still work for a living, still receive salary every day.
Well, if guys like Magnus Huystek can call themselves experts, you're a PhD, my friend.
This is just a reminder, this is being recorded and will be viewed online internationally and wherever you find your podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. I hope everyone's just read the T's and C's on this one.
Okay, well, so you're not giving him financial advice. This is you're not a financial
But
advisor.
I sent you my voice note.
But you live now. I'm not going to use a voice note if you can do it live. So just tell the people what you think. Come on, Dips. Give us the
what
spiel.
people need to know. Yeah, no, exactly. So what I was trying to tell you is, what I wish I learned at a younger age was about the eighth wonder of the world. And that's compound interest. And that's because the easiest way to explain it is with the rule of 72. So if you were to receive 10% on your money that you invested every year, and you take 72 divided by that 10%, you double your money in 7.2 years. So, as I told you, if you invest 100,000, So you invest 100,000 rand now, you'll have 200,000 rand in 7.2 years. Okay, which doesn't sound great. But let's say you bought a car right now, a car would probably be worth nothing in 7.2 years. So let's say you have 200,000 rand in 7.2 years, and you get that 10% for another 7.2 years, you'll have 400,000 rand. And so on and so on. If you do that just at 10%, which is a low rate, you get better rates in the market. In 35 years, you'd have 3.2 million rand. So you'd obviously have a lot. So
and that's
you can
without
take that
adding additional money to that amount.
No,
It's
that's just a one-off
sticking to it.
investment right in the beginning. You put 100,000 rand away today, you have 3.2 million rand in 35 years at 10%. But if you take that back, you take inflation out of it. Let's say inflation in South Africa is 4%. That your 100,000 rand now is actually worth about 800,000 rand in today's money. So let's say if you live a modest lifestyle, that'll sustain you for a year. So every 100,000 rand you save now, technically you can retire 1 year earlier. So I mean, think about that. So every 100,000 rand you put away now, 35 years, you've got a year where you can retire. So if you're 20 now, at 55, you're retiring for an extra year for every 100,000 rand you save. I mean, so if you look at it that way, it's well worth saving. And you'd probably get a much better rate if you were to go into a stock market and take a long-term view.
Okay, Debs, but just tell us, because we're a bunch of dentists and we couldn't get into medicine, so we're not the most clever people. Where do we invest our money? You say invest the money, so give us an example of what do you do?
So okay. So this is where I can't give you financial advice. I can tell you, what compound interest and what great best where you generally if you've got a long-term view, where you're going to get your best return is in equities or the stock market, and the reason for that is because you're taking more risk. So it's going to be volatile. You mustn't take a 5-year view. You take a 20-year view. But if you invest in the stock market over the long term, you invest with the right manager, that's where you'll definitely get your best return. So when I talk about 10% in South Africa right now, you could put your money in a capital bank account and you can get close to 10%. If you were to invest in the right companies over the long term, I mean, then you could get much more than 10%. An example would be, and everyone knows NASDAQ, when they first bought into Tencent, I think it was in 2001, they put $30 million into it. That's compounded at 72% in dollars per annum, so it doubled every year. And right now, that stake they have in Tencent is worth something like $150 billion, since 2001. So, I mean, that's an example of compound interest really working.
Okay, Debs, and then would you still invest in South Africa, or would you put your money abroad?
I mean, that's a tough one. So I think you need a diversified portfolio. Okay. So while there is still great opportunities in South Africa, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it comes with a lot of risk. I would say you need to diversify your portfolio and put a fair amount offshore. And let's say if you're a dentist, your whole practice is in South Africa, then I would probably put more of my savings offshore. If a lot of your earnings come and you invest in your career is based in South Africa, would be my advice. But that being said, there are great opportunities in South Africa. So I mean, a well-diversified portfolio is what I would go for.
Okay, so let's say the weak rand, if you invest overseas, don't you get double growth with the rand getting weaker?
So over time, the rand is also volatile, so it will, there's a fair value for the rand, like there is a fair value for stocks or anything. And basically, the rand depreciates over longer periods of time by the inflation differential between countries. So let's say the inflation in South Africa is 6% on average, and in the United States, in the dollar, it's 2%. Every year, the rand should weaken technically by 4%. Okay, so it's volatile around that, but year after year after year, the rand gets weaker by 4%. That being said, if you put money in a bank account in South Africa, you can get 8, 9, 10% interest rate. If you put it in a bank account in the United States, you get 2% interest rate. So the interest rate is supposed to basically compensate for that inflation differential. So once again, if you invest the right thing in South Africa, you should get inflation returns plus more, risk compensated. And in the United States, you'll get a low interest rate, but low inflation, so the dollar doesn't become weaker over time. So it really is, it depends what investment you choose in South Africa versus the United States.
Okay. And Debs, what's your view on property? Would you, let's say you're a dentist and you've got R1 million, would you buy your property or would you invest it in the stock market rather? The property
so property is not, generally property is not a great investment. The beauty of property is that you can gear it up a lot. Okay? So if you're comfortable with debt, so if you go into the stock market, you can buy like a CDS, which is the contract for difference, or you can buy a future where you gear it up, let's say 5 times. So you put down 20% of the money and you get 5 times gearing. But obviously, the stock market's volatile. So that stock moves by 20% and drops by 20%. They'll close you out and you lose the money. Whereas if you buy property, it's not marked on a daily basis. So property value supposed to in South Africa increase over, you have to take a long-term view, but you can get 100% gearing against it. So you're actually using someone else's money to buy it. And as long as the property market goes up by it and your income you generate out of the property is more than the interest rate you pay, it can be a good investment. So it really depends on the property and how much gearing you take against it. But generally, you will get a better return out of the stock market than property. That being said, if you really want to take property exposure, you can buy a property stock on the stock market, where you're doing exactly that. So what you're getting is property exposure. You can choose whatever property you want, residential, office, industrial, and it's liquid, so you can sell out at any time. Whereas, to trade into any normal property in South Africa, you have to pay 11% estate duty. When you sell out, you have to pay estate agent. So there's about probably 15% leakage if you buy physical property in South Africa. If you buy property stock, you avoid that. So if you're going to buy property in South Africa, you really got to take a long-term view. So then you're going to be prepared to hold that property for a long time, or develop it and develop it well, and sometimes you can make a profit out of that.
Okay.
Would be my view.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks a lot. I think you should stay on the line. Don't go away. Are you in a hurry or not?
No, I'm in no hurry.
Okay, cool. We had this conversation today, me and the guys, Daf, and we said of all the guys in the BBC, our friendship group, basically, there's only 2 living abroad, and the rest is still in South Africa. So Daf is going to tell us why it's a good idea to be out in the wilderness in South Africa and not take your stuff and move to Australia or New Zealand. So if you want to hang around.
So be in the wilderness, not the zoo. As in a recent podcast, there was a very well-known investor that said exactly that.
Yeah, that's what Daf was telling us about. So he's going to tell us a little bit more about that. So you're welcome to hang around. If you need to go, you must go. But otherwise, you're welcome to hang
No. I look forward to Daf telling that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Evert. Thanks, Debs. Good to hear your lovely voice. I look forward to catching up in the bush in a couple of weeks for business. Look, I think the first important thing to me is that you should always move towards something. Never move away from something. Never run away from something. If you're running away from something or you're scared of something, you'll typically take those fears and problems with you. So, there's nothing wrong with moving abroad for an opportunity. But my view is that if you're moving out of fear, it's probably not the right decision. And then secondly, there's this very neat analogy that Dwayne mentioned that was told by Paul Harris a couple of days ago on a podcast, and I think it summarizes, in my view, very well. And it's basically, if you're a wild animal, you can either live in a zoo or you can live in the wilderness. And by that, he means that if you live in a zoo, it's a very, very comfortable existence, almost as comfortable as living in a jail as a human. but basically you get fed 3 times a day. There's a lovely warm temperature. Every now and then they bring you a little mate, a little baby's worth. It's secure. You've got people coming to look at you every day. So it's a pretty neat existence. It's very, very safe, very low risk. Or you can live in the wilderness, which obviously South Africa is at this point in time. It's a much more exciting existence. There's lots of ups and downs. You've got to be nimble, you've got to be on your feet. There's some predators out there, but there's a lot more opportunity. And at the end of the day, it's a better way to live and a better way to be alive. So I'm not saying you should necessarily not invest in the zoo. You can definitely do that. But my strong preference is to live in the wilderness because it's more exhilarating.
And it is
Yeah,
that,
but,
mate.
yeah, but
Yeah.
Yeah, but not everyone is a wild dog, right? Some people are zoo animals, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really up to you. But if you want to live, like a wild dog would, and I mean, it's beautiful and it's great, then there's lots of opportunity in the wilderness. But if you're more of a zoo animal and you want to play it safe, then obviously a zoo can be attractive to certain people.
Yeah, but I also think, obviously specifically for people that are from South Africa, is the turmoil we're experiencing now is nothing compared to what was experienced in the 80s. Very few people knew, but South Africa got an IMF bailout in the early 90s. It took us 10, 12 years to pay that back. We've had lots of ups and downs, and although now is a difficult time, we've been through periods like this as a country before, and we've come through it. And unfortunately, the press is extremely negative. So I would advise every single person to stop reading News 24 if you can. And there's very little positive news, and that's unfortunate. So, and then the other point is it's not good to move away from something. You'll probably take your problems with you. It's better to move towards an opportunity or towards something. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with living in a zoo, but you should consider all your options before you move.
Bernie, I think you should jump in here quickly. Tell us, what do you do for a living, and what's your advice for young dentists starting out a new practice, or maybe finishing community service and they need to get out in the wilderness and start working? What do you suggest, investment-wise and in life in general?
I'm actually more curious to learn from the dentists. I mean, just listening to the conversations you've shared, you get some powerful insights, and I think that's always fascinating when you've got a bit of an let's call it a diverse crowd of folks that you chat to, and Evert, I suspect that's part of why you do podcasts and the like, is because you're interested in more than just your field of expertise. But I'm from Cape Town area, and I studied finance and law, and I work in an investment firm where we take typically stakes in private companies and help them grow and hopefully realize some return for our stakeholders. And that involves having to kind of be involved in more than one sphere of expertise, and it's kind of partly being comfortable in an uncomfortable spot sometimes. If you assume that you know the most, you're probably in the wrong room, and that I find on a daily basis. I think it's an old adage, but without a goal you can't score, and that becomes very, I think, key for any individual who wants to invest in the longer term. And investment doesn't need to mean a lot of money to invest. It just means starting somewhere, and case in point that Dwayne spoke about. Now, that being mentioned, I firmly believe also not doing something is also a decision. So when you decide you're going to invest in the stock exchange or the markets, they call it, there's some, don't change your mind when the environment changes. I've found that to be true, and when you do that over generations,
What do you mean with that? Just
it becomes quite powerful. So for example, assume you say that you're going to take a view on a let's call it a certain couple of stocks that you, for argument's sake, are blue blood stocks, and let's use the example of Naspers. As soon as you hear some bad news from press coming from China on a macro level, let's say the economy is doing poorly, that doesn't necessarily reflect the intrinsic value of the stock, the prospects of it, and also the future expectations of let's call it return. So it would be simple and silly to kind of be swayed by that bias and then sell it because you think it changed. Rather say, I'm not touching this for 10, 15, even 20 years. And in my mind, that becomes a valuable force. But you need to be quite disciplined. And for me, simple things like writing it down and sticking to it helps a lot.
And Bernie, you also quite involved with the medicine world. Your dad's a specialist and your brother's a doctor. What's your, like on a personal level, growing up in a household with a doctor, what was your experiences living with a doctor? And like, especially a lot of us are getting kids, and it'll be interesting to hear your point of view. Your dad obviously worked long hours. What would you have liked to change growing up, or what did you enjoy about growing up in a household where your dad was a doctor that worked probably 20 hours a day?
Yeah, I think if I could have wished one thing for my folks, it would be chats like these. And the reason being is that when you are so focused on a specific vocation, anything foreign to that sometimes might feel intimidating, or one way not just deal with it, right? And in my mind, some basic financial advice on an early stage, even at university. I'm a firm believer, and this is just my personal view, is that irrespective of what type of field of study you do, you should have a degree of investment advice from an early stage, so that you don't get caught off guard as soon as you start earning some money and go to the first person that's offering you the star on the moon, you know. So
but don't you think that's what happens with doctors and dentists and people that earn from the get-go quite a lot of money? They start and that's where I want to get to is less is more. They start buying crap, and I'm a good example of impulsive buying and buying unnecessary stuff. And we had a talk from an investment guy, and he said an interesting thing. He said dentists or professional people get money, and every month it kind of gets a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So you never budget. You never have a budget and say, okay, I've got X amount of money for the year or for the month, and I'm going to stick to that. You always just check your bank account and there's money, and then you use it and use it. And then at the end of the year you come and you don't get a bonus or anything, but you've spent your bonus on rubbish throughout the year. Where a guy who works for a salary or works for a company, he gets an X amount salary, and then at the end of the year he gets a bonus. But that bonus wasn't budgeted in for anything, so he takes that bonus and he can invest that. So do you think we should kind of live like that? We get a fixed salary and kind of stick to our salary, and then at the end of the year we can pay out dividends from our company and then invest that money. Do you think?
Money is like time. It's like a resource,
Yeah.
and it's not infinite. You know, you're quite limited, and if you're not measuring something, you can't change it. Something that worked well for me is I took some time to decide what I'm spending most of my day on, wrote it down, literally a timesheet. And if you do the same with your money, within a week you'll get a sense, within a month you'll get a picture, in a year you'll see trends. And then you know exactly what you're spending it on. You'll be surprised. I mean, a simple example, I love a really good cup of coffee, right? But at the end of the month, if you take the 25 Rand you spend per day on that, it becomes significant. And is it really justified? And you do that with all of your expenses. It doesn't take a lot. There's many apps that do these things. But if you measure it, you can decide whether you agree with this or not. And then you take Dwayne's advice and you start thinking, well, if I did save, let's call it, that little bit of money that I didn't need to spend on those extra cup of coffees, what would have been the implication if I had some form of compound interest on it?
But isn't that then like starting to micromanage everything? And isn't the idea of living to enjoy life and not to sit and worry about buying a cup of coffee every day? That's also the other flip of the coin.
I think there's good advice from old Neertling. He's unfortunately not here, but he sort of, he once said to me that the saving should be the first expense in your budget. So, and I guess that's, to me there's two different views, you know, or paths that you take. One is you become an employee, or you decide you're going to work till you're 60, and then you need to work backwards. Like, Dwayne said, how much money do you need when you're 60? And obviously a financial plan or someone can help you with that. And for you to get to that financial goal, you need to save. Alternatively, I don't suggest people do this, but you get more entrepreneurial people where you probably want to invest in, let's say, if you're a dentist or a medical doctor, you buy one practice, you'll open up another practice, and you'll build an engine. And that engine is basically what will sustain you over time, because when you're gone, and this is a key thing that you need to consider, you'll need to have someone that can operate that engine, that can give you dividends.
But that's a difficult thing in the dental world. There's too many egos involved, and then as soon as you pull out let's say I'm the guy, I've opened up 10 practices, as soon as I leave, everyone does their own thing.
Yes.
All the dentists who work there, so it's like, Debs, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Debs, it's like you said, it's maybe not a bad idea to diversify instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, and maybe instead of opening up 10 practices, open one practice and invest the rest offshore or whatever. So if one thing goes pear-shaped, it doesn't all go down.
No. So diversification is definitely. So I mean, but diversifying too wide is also then you just get sort of a general market return. So, but diversifying, is no doubt about it. It's the only free lunch in investing. So if you have 20 different investments, it definitely diversifies your risk a bit. But the major mistake I've noticed that people saving over time is that let's say you were to say this in the stock market, right? So then you start watching the stock price every day and the market every day, and people panic. So then you have, like, let's say with COVID, the market was down 30-40%, and people panic and they pull their money out. But what you've got to remember is when you're buying into the stock market, what you're really buying is a share, let's call it one share in a company. So it's like just buying into a dental practice, right? And then you get to get voted with the weighing machine, okay? So a dental practice, you generally know year after year, like you said, the cash flow will increase by a certain amount, and it will generate that cash flow. And so that cash flow is worth something, and that's the weighing machine. You weigh what the underlying company, the cash it can produce. The stock market has got a lot of sentiment, and people panic and buy and sell the stock, and that's the voting machine. So people might think that it's worth a little less today because, Day, for instance, has less tourists coming into it, and suddenly it's worth it. But technically, the tourists will come back, and it will generate the same cash on your back. And the stock market does that a lot. So there's a lot of voting in the stock prices go up and down today. But you need to learn to sort of take a longer term view. If you buy a quality company, the underlying cash flows, like a good dentist practice, will always be there. So that company's intrinsic value, as Bernard was saying, hasn't changed that much. So you almost need to learn to ignore the daily spike in the stock market, stop watching that, and rather put the money away for the long term, and take a long-term view. And over time, it will compound, and the stock price will go up and companies need to cash. And that's the biggest
Debs, you're breaking up a lot. We can't really hear you. I don't know what's going on with this line. But we're gonna have to phone Shayne as well now. He's waiting for us to call him. So we're gonna say goodbye to you, Debs. Thanks for your advice, and we're looking forward to the bush in a couple of weeks' time for our business trip.
100%.
But
That'll be.
Say how's it to Carmen, and thanks a lot for giving us your advice. Have a lucky evening.
Yeah.
Take care, Debs.
Okay.
Cheers, bye.
Okay, cheers.
Okay, so the next guy we're phoning quickly is Shayne Vervoort. He was my roommate at university. An absolute interesting legend. And what makes interesting talking to Shayne is he was a McKinsey consultant for a long time. Bernie, what else did he do? He was a marketing manager for high tech at one point.
Well, just one step before that is he's a very bright guy academically. I think he qualified in his he walked into his first year with I think 8 straight A's. And usually most people take 6 subjects when you're in matric in the years that he qualified, and then did actuarial science, which is a pretty challenging subject in itself. But then realized he wanted to do something more unique and get some experience in marketing. So he convinced high tech to make him a marketing manager. And I'm basically telling you his story, but I think it's a pretty apt intro to a guy that thinks outside the norm.
Completely outside the box.
And that's awesome.
And the interesting thing, he's now running a couple of veterinary practices. His dad and mom's are vets, and he now runs a few vet practices. So he knows big business and small business, and it'll be lucky to hear his point of view. So let's just get him on the line quickly. I hope he's going to answer now. He also rode a motorcycle through Africa.
Yeah, on his way to his MBA.
Yeah.
Dr. Burger,
Can you hear us? How's it?
loud and clear.
Like, you just had the most amazing intro. I never knew you were such a cool person. Bernie spoke you up so well. It's amazing.
Hi, Shayne.
How's it, Shayne?
Do you do it that you don't let other people hear what other people say about them?
Yeah. So you don't know what we've said about you. It's amazing. It's pretty good though. I actually like you more than what I liked you before. You get the kids to bed.
Kids are in bed.
Okay. Listen, Shayne, we spoke to Dips just now, the Mexican. He gave us some investment advice. Dav is sitting here. He just had his first surf in Jeffries and Bernie. So give us your advice to, talk to us about your experience in the small business as opposed to working for McKinsey's for a few years, and what's the pitfalls you see and the interesting things you've seen in the last couple of years working in the veterinary practice. Shayne.
Hi. Yeah. Now I'm here. But it's people are allergic to small business. They think things are run badly and things are run not as well as they could be. They think it's emotional, and it's simply not true. I think where I think the world is going is a more independent orientation, a more community-focused orientation, a more trusted part of society orientation, and big corporate can never do that. So you talk about McKinsey, and we know why McKinsey was in the news, and I think the PwCs of the world will be in the news for similar things, and the Deloitte will be in for similar things. And these big corporates cannot be pillars of society anymore. And I think that's where your professionals, your vets, your GPs, your dentists, they still have an important role to play in communities and societies because they're independent and because they're part of the community. And I think that's an incredible opportunity for these dentists and for these vets, because the world is going towards that. You see the neighborhood markets with local produce. You see the move away from or the move towards corner shops. You see the move towards local farmers, local produce. And I think that independence and that local community level interaction between a professional and his client base or his patient base, I think that's the future. I don't see this hospitalization or these big clinics and everything under one roof. That's not the future of what people want. They want interactions. They want relationships.
I think people want to see people. They don't want to see brands and logos. They want to see real people and have a connection with them.
Yeah, you want your family doctor. You don't want someone in a faceless, concrete, brutalist building. It's not what they want. They want the doctor next door that has been with the family for X number of years. And I think that you see that especially in vets. That's where I come from. with my two parents as vets. But I think dentistry is in the same boat as that, and GPs are in the same boat as that. And I think, it would be. I don't even think it would be a pity to see that disappear, because I think it's going to go from strength to strength in the next while and become actually a very positive of the independent business and the independent professional.
But don't you think it's becoming, business is run so poorly by these people? Because like, I'm a dentist, I'm not a businessman, so I'm not doing the business side very well. I'm not doing the dentistry well. So don't you think we're ending up with people grouping towards group practices because they need someone to run the practice, and they don't want to run the practice. All they want to do is work and get a salary at the end of the month, because that's what's happening at the moment. All the people are running towards Medicrosses and Intercares because I don't want to be bothered with doing all the VAT returns and all the business side of things. Don't you think dentists are running the business poorly, and that's why they're running away from that responsibility?
No, you're spot on, and you see the same thing with vets. And let me tell you, that's not just that the businesses get run badly, hey? So in veterinary, we see a huge shift of vets to corporate. So either becoming sales reps, and if that's going to destroy someone's soul who studied 7 years to look after animals to become a sales rep or something in a corporate, I mean, that's soul destroying for these people. Or you see immigration, or you see something far worse, and we know the suicide rates of the veterinary profession and the dentistry profession, and I think you've got the effect of trying to run a business and not doing it as well as it should be done are not just financial. There's huge familial sacrifices, there's huge emotional and psychological sacrifices that these people make, these professionals.
So what's the solution for that problem then? What do you think? How can a guy like you help a vet run his business better? What are you doing at the moment?
So firstly, I don't think it's a guy like me. I think you need a team of people who all specialize in different things. And let me tell you, so I think you have to let people do what they studied to do, what they're good at doing, and what they love doing. Now, for a dentist to want to do stock take, or for a dentist to want to do VAT returns or HR problems, it's not what they studied 7 years or 8 years to do. It's not what they love doing, and it's not what they're good at doing. So you can find someone to do a VAT return cheaper than you, better than you, and they'll enjoy doing it. So why the hell are you doing it? This is the first thing that you should look at as a professional. You're a professional who studied to be a professional in an area, and that's dentistry. And I've faced this with vets. Vets study to be vets. And they end up, we got a phrase for them, we call them reluctant entrepreneurs. No vet wants to be an entrepreneur. They end up being entrepreneurs because they're forced into it. Because you end your 7 years or 8 years of studying, and you end up saying, what do I do now? So I either join a vet who's got a practice already, and I know they're probably not going to pay me as much as I should in market related because they have to get their pound of flesh. Or I open a clinic, which is the worst thing you could do. Or I buy a clinic, but I don't have the business savvy to buy a clinic, so I know I'm either going to get a worse deal from them, and then I try and get a better deal from them, and then no one ends up happy in the deal, the buyers nor the sellers. And I think that's when you need a partner who studied business, who loves doing business, and who is good at doing business. And then it's a partnership. And I think that when you get a partnership of those three things, of what you studied to do, what you enjoy doing, and what you're good at doing, then I think you get better experience and better outcomes. And the better experience is twofold. It's the better experience for yourself because it's a work-life balance that suddenly becomes sustainable and you can start enjoying it and enjoying your profession. There's too many people who do their profession and it's a job, whereas you studied a profession because it was a vocation at one point that you thought you were going to enjoy. So your experience becomes for yourself as a professional, but also for your clients. your clients start appreciating it more. I can't tell you, I've not been to the dentist in 5 or 6 years, not because I don't want to go to the dentist, but because I don't know which dentist to go to, and I go to a dentist, and then I never get a call back after 6 months saying, come and clean your teeth. And that's the biggest error in the world, because if I got a call, I'd get in my car and I'd go, because I've got now a relationship with that person. So I've not got an experience from my dentist. Then the outcome. So all these independent practices can never deliver a standardized outcome. I can take you to my vet practices where within one practice I haven't got standardized outcomes. And I think that's where your bigger corporatization actually is on the front foot with standardization of processes, of outcomes, of delivering a level of service that's standardized, because you never know if you're going to this dentist or this dentist. Suddenly you go to a brand and you say, okay, well, I'm getting a level of service that I can expect and I know what to pay for. And I'm not scared of paying for it because it's standardized. And I think the only way you're going to improve healthcare, and we're seeing that in veterinary now, the only way you're going to improve healthcare is through the standardization of service of healthcare. And if you can deliver a standardized product, you're going to improve your outcome. And we see that within one of my practices. I can go to 3 different vets and get 3 different quotes for the same procedure. That's not possible. So this next step is to start standardizing these things across independents, so that you've got a common theme and a common theme across these independents, that there's a trusted person behind it. And I think that's what we're trying to do in the veterinary space, is not take away this independent aura of these small veterinary practices, because and you have the same thing with dentists. And a small independent professional practice is the most amazing thing. It's got a team spirit second to none. It's got a work culture second to none, because everyone there believes in what they're doing. It's got a client base that believes in these people. Like that small independent culture of business thing, no corporate can touch that. And I think the corporatization shouldn't be at the front end. It shouldn't be client-facing. It should be at the back end, doing the HR, doing the VAT returns, doing the accounts on a standardized format, and making a network of dentists. What we're seeing in the veterinary space is, because of your fragmented market, because of all these vets running independent practices, they almost start competing with each other and slitting each other's throats with regards to pricing and stuff. It's the most ridiculous market, and I'm sure you see that in dentistry. But what you need to do is the dentists shouldn't be competing with each other. They should be working with each other as a community to raise the standard of dentistry. And I think you can only do that when you've got a big brother in the back end saying, let's do all the admin for you. Let's take it off so you can be a professional and see your colleagues as a community instead of competition. Because the worst thing you can do is that you see the dentist next door at competition and you start undercutting them on price. Or it shouldn't be like that. You guys all studied the same. Like in veterinary especially, they all came from the same university, for goodness sake. There's only one university in South Africa, or 2 universities in South Africa, Mbudza and Opie. And so you start thinking, why are you guys competing? Rather collaborate and work together to raise the standard of veterinary. And I think dentistry is in actually the same place.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying, to have the big guy in the background, not the forefront, because everyone is doing the big corporate businesses, but having like a affiliate dentist, let's say me and Bernie and Dav are all dentists, but we're all under the same umbrella, but no one knows it. The patient that walks in doesn't have a clue. We use the same
same accountant,
and the same guy to crunch the numbers for us. Yeah, so it's quite an interesting way to approach it. It's always been the other way around. Shayne, I'm going to ask you one more thing before we say goodbye. Phil is waiting for us. The last thing I want to ask you is, do you also find that guys selling practices in the veterinary space and guys buying practices, there's a big difference in what the guys are willing to pay and what the guys are asking for when they sell the practices, or is it just in dentistry that I'm seeing that?
There's a big difference, but it's a misunderstood difference. Okay, firstly, the people selling their practices have the right expectations. For goodness sake, they've built these things for 30 years. Okay, and so the thinking behind what they deserve is correct. The misalignment comes from a youngster not being able to understand what they're paying for. And so you need to split these assets up. So what often happens in veterinary, and it's probably dentistry as well, you sell the whole caboodle because the person just wants to retire. So you sell the property, the equipment, and the practice together as one like huge lump sum, and no one understands what they're paying for. It's the worst thing you could do in a business. So, but remember, another thing, your professional practice is only valuable because of your client base. And so in dentistry, it's probably, well, in veterinary, but it's probably similar in dentistry, no one will pay for goodwill, hey? They see it as a swear word.
Yeah.
For goodness sake, as a professional, that's the only thing you can pay for.
But don't you think people just, if the doctor leaves, the patients also leave with him?
No, not if you manage a transition. Yeah. And so the important thing is you don't get to 65 or to 70 or to 75, and goodness knows best works to 80. But you don't get to that age and decide you want to sell, because then your practice is worth nothing. You manage a transition. And if you manage a transition, and if you're not greedy early on, if you can bring younger people in at 5% or 10% or 15% and blood them into the practice, then you've got someone to buy the rest of your share. But what's happening now is professionals, and that's vets and dentists probably, are stuck in this traditional shareholder mindset. And it's a very boomer-orientated mindset, saying if I'm the owner of this practice, I have to be 100% owner.
No.
If there's 2 partners, they have to be 50% owners. If there's 3 partners, 33.3% each owners. It's the wrong mindset for business ownership, okay? That's my first big gripe with the ownership model that we have in profession. But you've got another huge problem, is you've got twofold. You've got a generational gap and you've got a gender gap. So the people selling practices are older and they're baby boomers, and they're used to working 15 hours a day, and they believe that's what you have to work to be successful. And that's right. That's where they came from. That's their place, and that's their point of reference. But the people buying practices are millennials. Millennials don't believe in a 14-hour workday. They can never do that. They're not conditioned that way. And so you've got the expectations between this buyer and seller that are misaligned. They're not going to ever meet each other with respect. Okay? Because the millennial can't respect the first 14-hour workday. It's not in their DNA to respect that 14-hour workday. And the baby boomer can't respect the millennial because that 14-hour workday is not possible. They don't want to do it. A more apparent gap is the gender gap. And we see this in veterinary. I don't know if it's like this in dentistry, but in veterinary, your people selling, because they restricted access to these education opportunities for women back in the day, but your people selling are men. That is just, it's the previously advantaged, the white male. That's what happened. And so you've got these white males selling, older gents, and you've got and 80% of the people coming out of Onderstepoort now are female. And so now you've got younger female and older man. So you've got this gender mismatch, and women have different lifestyle needs throughout their career. And most of the time, these younger women have young families, and so a 14-hour workday is not going to work. It's not in their frame of reference. They want a balanced lifestyle. And I think that's where you get these huge pressures in this profession, is that there is an imbalance. There's no work-life balance. And so besides the financing, like for veterinary, I know it works, but for dentistry, I'm sure it works. but your finance of your business model works. But it doesn't have to work at the sacrifice of your work-life relationship or balance. And I think that's not something that's apparent at the moment in these professions. Yeah. And as soon as you can make people understand that they can have a good income and you need a good income in South Africa at the moment because everything is private orientated, private healthcare, private security, private education. So if you study 7 years, you need that. And the pool of immigration, because it's a good qualification you have now, and we see this with them, and that they headhunted to UK or headhunted to Australia with the lure, the fake lure, I believe, of dollars and pounds. But you've got this huge problem that people think that you can't earn a decent living wage in South Africa as a profession. If you're studying 7 years and you're not earning a decent living wage, something is wrong. Not with the profession, but with the business model. And it comes down to all these factors that we've spoken about, this work-life balance, this competitive nature between the neighboring practices and professions, this underpaying of people because you've got 5 years left in your job or as an owner, and so you underpay your staff, your younger dentists or your younger vets. That's not correct. And I think you need someone with a holistic view to say, what are we doing to make sure that this profession is sustainable? Because if we carry on with the losing people to industry, if we carry on losing people to immigration, if we carry on losing people to suicide, there's no profession left. And I think that would not only be a pity to the profession and a disaster to the profession, but it would be a pity to the clients and the patients, because they rely on this as a pillar of society. For goodness sake, if you're a vet, and my mom was a vet, my mom was a vet for a community, and if you walk into Spar on a Saturday morning, you get stopped 10 times by clients who say thank you or appreciate or give an update. And that's necessary. Communities need it and societies need it, and the big corporates cannot deliver that. It has to be independent, but it has to be independent with a slight change, because the struggle, this reluctant entrepreneurship is not just a financial problem. It causes huge psychological and emotional problems for these professionals, and that's an awful thing. They shouldn't have to go through this. They've studied 7 years. They deserve a reimbursement for that, or a lifestyle that they can manage over time for that.
Shayne, awesome. Thanks a lot. It's super interesting to hear your thoughts around it. And I think there's a lot of similarities between veterinary and dentistry. So we'll definitely talk to you again at some point. And I think we should just discuss everything a little bit further. We're going to go on and speak to Paul, to Phil quickly. So thanks a lot for your insight, and we'll chat soon. Appreciate it.
Good. Enjoy the surfing.
Cheers, man. Bye.
Cheers, Shayne.
Alright, so we're going to get Phil on the line. Dav, I think you should introduce Phil. Phil was Dav's roommate at Stellenbosch, so should be interesting.
Phil's also known as the Bronze God. His middle name's Rudolph. He's from Pietermaritzburg. He's a Hilton boy. He's half Afrikaans, half English. He also studied actuarial science.
Also a model.
Also a part-time model. Soon to become a father. Lives in Joburg, and he's an option trader at Standard Bank. He does very complicated trades every day, but he also does a lot of investing on the side.
Yeah, we're getting on the line now. Thanks, Dav.
Hello.
Phil, how's it?
Getting you, Evert.
Lucky, you just had an amazing introduction by your ex-roommate, Handre. So.
Oh, wow. Why didn't I get to hear it?
You can't hear your own introduction. Your ego is big enough, trust me. I know you well enough.
Phil, the stage has been set, dude. You're definitely featuring her.
So there's a bit of expectation, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I go for it. We just all ears. Phil, we said the topic is less is more. So, how are you gonna blow our minds? Because you always blow our minds. So, just how are you gonna blow our minds today?
So I'm assuming you're speaking to to dentists who are coming into the field and potentially dentists who have already been practicing for a while.
Yeah. So the audience is younger dentists. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I wrote down a few things which have helped me, progress in my career. And a lot of it is reducing the noise, and a lot of it is under the theme of kind of getting to the nucleus of what achievement is and what progression is, and how one really kind of beats the status quo. So I think maybe the first thing that I can really relate to is generally, the highest sort of heights that you'll reach, the kind of ultimate potential that you'll get to is generally directly correlated and determined by your indifference to failure, your immunity to ridicule, your devotion to uncompromise, your blindness to embarrassment, your limitless experimentation. And almost every successful person I've ever seen has a disgust for the status quo, just kind of find new ways and will not accept the way that things currently are. So that's kind of the first few points I'd make, for someone to be kind of truly successful in any kind of field.
Philly, just repeat the last point you broke up.
You just broke up there.
Just on the very last one.
So just sort of after limitless experimentation, just your disgust for the status quo, I think there's very few people who have reached, kind of pinnacles in their industries who accept the way that things are currently. Generally, people who achieve a lot, want to change things for the better, and they don't accept things the way that they currently are done and the way that everyone expects them to be done.
Is it awful?
Did you get?
Yeah.
Did you get that?
That's clear, yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah. So, and I think sort of, if you really want to achieve, big things, I think that hatred towards the status quo, you can also think in terms of, generally that constant kind of companion of like an incapacitating fear of thinking too small, always questioning yourself whether you are thinking too small is also a common denominator in people that move fast, and something quite simple to conceptualize.
Philly, hoe werk hierdie lyn nou lekker? Are you there?
Yeah.
Just when you speak to a young dentist, the issues we've got is we're getting out of varsity, we work for the government for a year, and after 1 year we earn a pretty good salary in that year. Then we start working in real life, and then we realize we can't actually make money. So what the guys are doing is they either go back to the government, working for the government, or they go back, or they move to Australia, or want to move to the UK or whatever, go and write exams to move abroad. If you are a young dentist and you're sitting here, you've got to start doing something, and you're saying you shouldn't accept the status quo. What kind of advice would you give a young guy on what to do? And especially because we're trying to get people to stay in South Africa and work in South Africa. What kind of things would you explore or look into from a completely outside of dentistry point of view? What kind of things would you like to see in a dentist when you go to your dentist? What must he do to attract your attention?
I think if you kind of really look at dentistry with crystal clear eyes, and you really look at how things are currently being done in a uncompromising way, I think eventually it becomes fairly clear that the bar is pretty low in every single industry, and almost everyone in the industry has kind of adjusted themselves to stay below that bar. So I would look at exactly how things are being done currently, and I'd really try and fish out the inefficiencies that are there, and try and find the one or two things that can really kind of get you to the top of your field, even if it's a subsection of your field. I think it's just very dangerous to try and assume that if you just do what everyone else is doing, that you're going to be successful. I think it's about thinking completely differently and asking the questions that no one else is asking, and sort of becoming what no one else wants to become. And that goes for pretty much any industry. And I mean, in South Africa, for example, we've got such a diverse landscape that the challenges are different, and you can't solve third or emerging market, developing market problems with a first world mindset. So we've got to think a little bit differently here and find ways of finding solutions for our population and what we are faced with.
What's the issue? We're competing with the first world, so we're trying to offer a first world service at a third world price. So South Africa is quite unique, I think, in the world, that our dentistry levels are quite high, but we buying stuff at first world prices. We're buying all these expensive stuff, but we've got to provide a service at third world rates. Doesn't make sense. So our tariffs are so cheap, so we're struggling a little bit with making ends meet, because we're buying expensive, we're buying all the top of the range equipment, top of the range materials and consumables, and then we're charging a third world price, and we're trying to give a first world service. So it's quite frustrating trying to make all the things come together at the end of the month. Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. But I do think, if I look at sort of the medical field generally and smaller practices, and this is an issue in and for GPs as well. No, I think it's just kind of about rethinking, how it's being done. Like a single practice with, a receptionist or two and an assistant, a dental assistant. That model is, I think it's quite old. If you look at how some of the more successful medical practitioners have gone about, making their time a lot more valuable, they've completely changed the setup. You don't sit in the waiting room and see one person. Maybe you'll have 3 or 4 different rooms where people rotate through, where the dentists are actually just seeing more people. I think it's about efficiency, and it's about you should not be doing jobs that you don't have to do, that you can pass down. It's kind of about moving up in the value chain and making sure that you have a model that you're always doing something which is worth your time, and kind of not wasting your time on tasks which can be done by someone else or can be trained by someone else.
Yeah, but there's also, I think, you've got to decide early on in your career which way you go. Do you go, because we've got such a diverse country with diverse people, you've got to either be the cheap guy or you've got to be the high-end kind of dentist. So I think the advice I always give to people is, you can't confuse your customers. You need to decide, are you the expensive guy and you're going to charge high-end prices and do valuable items, or are you going to do cheaper work and work in 10 different rooms and see 100 people a day versus 2 people a day. So do you agree with that in South Africa you've got to kind of choose your market and stick to it?
Yeah, I think generally you have to find one thing that's going to take you straight to the top. you can't. I completely agree. You can't try and service the whole market and do kind of a three-quarter job, in every aspect of the field. I think you have to find something that that you can be incredible at and be the best at, and then people will flock to you. It's I think it's specifically in dentistry there's very strong word of mouth, because obviously advertising is not such a big driver, but people ask each other which dentist you go to for what, and if you do one thing really well, and that doesn't matter at which income level that is. Obviously, if you're going sort of lower income, you need to find ways of becoming extremely scalable. And if you're doing higher end, then you've got to find unique ways which are fairly sort of foolproof, and the trust is obviously super expensive if people are paying more. And I think that targeted focus is definitely something that is valuable, and I completely agree. But I think you just have to kind of reinvent a little corner of the industry a little bit to kind of really do something special and make a success of it.
Okay, just the last thing, Phil. If you spoke quickly about marketing and word of mouth, and do you think there's value in marketing yourself? Should a dentist go out there and placing ads on Facebook and Instagram and the radio, or would you rather find your dentist by asking your neighbor, or would you want to find him online? How would you look for your dentist?
So I mean, the way I would look for my dentist is probably through word of mouth, because I kind of work with a lot of people who are in an area. But the way I would approach something like that, anything new, is I wouldn't look at what everyone else is doing. I would do continuous experimentation and try and do as cheap experimentation as possible. Whether you use Google AdWords, or whether you use Facebook, or whether you kind of start, doing videos, think about how things are changing, and just try and do as many cheap experiments as possible, because if you have enough data through cheap experiments, you can quite quickly see what is actually working, and it's quite easy and cheap to forget about what is not working. So it's kind of about trying to cast the net as wide as possible, but then concentrating on the areas which are doing really well. There's no point in, if your email marketing is not working, spending more time on email marketing, when if Google AdWords are working really well, then rather doing that much better. That's a way more effective way of kind of going.
So it's important to know where your customers come from. Whether they get you through email marketing or Google AdWords or Facebook. So you should those channels should be identifiable. You should know if someone saw you on Facebook or wherever, so you can then focus more on that area where you're getting a lot of attention from. Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And just distinguishing yourself somewhat, just if I Google dentist in my area now, almost every advert will look identical. Just kind of, I don't know, maybe it's someone writing about their experience with the dentist, or just doing something a little bit different to how, I want to search, I want to see, okay, that is definitely the person I want to go to, and how do you create that? Just keep asking yourself more quality questions about what you're doing, and not kind of falling into habits of of just doing things the same way over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah, maybe just one thing to add here, just from a sort of business point of view. I think the most powerful information that you have, other than your sort of knowledge that you studied for, is you've got information on all your customers. You've got their email addresses and their cell phones, and a bit of a value add once a quarter, in form of a newsletter or something else, like, what sort of toothpaste you'll get you, something like that, because the beauty of dentistry is you have to see the dentist once a year, and a little bit of a reminder to do that goes a long way.
Yeah. So you would like to get an email reminder or WhatsApp every 6 months?
Yeah, and if
about-
people can unsubscribe to the newsletter, it's just an idea, but that's your most powerful because you've got the details.
Yeah.
I mean, people pay millions of rands to get
to buy data like
to
that.
buy data, and you've already got it, and you've got all the person's problems, probably half of his personal life.
Yeah.
Not to sort of infringe on that, but you can send them the details, and I think people would appreciate that value added. Because very few people do it.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line of spamming people, but like you say, very few people. Dentists are not spamming anyone. They're too busy filling holes. they're not doing marketing at all, actually. Because like Phil, you were saying now, marketing and different avenues of doing marketing, but dentists are not even doing marketing. They're just busy filling holes.
Yeah.
So we spoke to Shayne. We spoke to Shayne just before you, and he said you need that big brother in the background that can help you with all of that stuff. And it makes so much sense that you can do what you do well and get someone else to do the marketing and get someone else to do the stuff that you're not good with.
Yeah, I mean that's the ultimate. I think what Shayne is doing is kind of the ultimate where you can have a completely symbiotic relationship. But I mean, I do think marketing is also, everyone thinks of marketing in terms of new clients only. But I couldn't quite hear what I think Jack was saying in the background. But I think just thinking logically about it, and some people miss their dental appointments for 5 years. I mean, if you look through your books and you see, you'll have plenty of clients that haven't seen you for 5 years, and that's not really great for preventative care. So, going through just asking people if it's okay if you send a reminder, using more updated platforms. I mean, getting an SMS. I don't even read my SMSs anymore. Why not use business WhatsApp or just WhatsApp? That's a lot more effective, and you kind of showing people, hey, I'm modern, I'm current. It's a quick conversation. It's non-threatening. No one's going to get threatened by. The last thing you want to do is call a person, because you get so many telesales calls that you're already speaking to the person on the back foot. So a simple WhatsApp message that distinguishes you from probably 99% of dentists currently.
Yeah,
but just doing things in a slightly better, more up to date and current fashion is, and reminding people, oh, last time you were at the dentist was on this date. And checking with them and kind of using your current client base, because that is one of dentistry's strongest points, is you actually have an extremely loyal client base. It's quite rare that you have such a loyal client base. So it's about servicing those people properly and making sure that you're giving them value. And the way that you give them value is by, is by doing preventative care and kind of, value-based dentistry, which I'm sure Shayne spoke about, in the medical side of things. So, that's instead of waiting for, someone to break a tooth, and you're kind of doing work that you actually don't want to do anyway, just filling holes, as you were saying. You'd rather see your patients be healthy and happy, and come to you more often, where you've got sort of your repeat customers, but they're happy, and you've got a much better flow of healthy customers.
Yeah, I spoke to a dentist guy from Italy, and he said what you want to create is this big pool of people that's completely serviced and happy, and all they do is come for maintenance every 6 months, and you want to remind them, so they keep on flowing in and out, and then they refer new patients to you that you can do big makeovers and fix them up again, but then they go into the maintenance pool again, and that's where you make your money, is all that 6 monthly maintenance that you just keep on. But what you're saying is right, you need to do like internal marketing to your existing patients, not just to the getting new people, but getting your old people back in for their checkups and their cleanings and whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you give a good service to a person, the chances that they refer you are so much higher.
Yeah.
If you current and you're really trying to be, give preventative care, and you're not trying to just plug holes the whole time. It's that I think will do a lot of its own marketing. for you for new clients.
Philly, we're going to wrap it up now. Dav surfed for the first time ever today. I wouldn't call it surfing. He was out on a board in the water behind the break.
I was in and out, Phil. I'm pretty good at that.
He didn't break a board though. Last time you were here, you smashed the board in half. So, can you give him any advice for a freestyle surfer? What advice would you give him?
Sure. I tried to bodyboard with Daf once in KZN, and I thought I was never going to see him again, but he made it back. So I think prestaters are strong, so they'll figure it out.
Like a Phil.
Philly, thanks a lot. Bernie, you've been awfully
Awesome.
quiet tonight. Phil, you don't have to go. We've got no one else to phone, so you can hang around for Bernie's. Have you got any advice that you still want to give a young dentist before you go?
No, I mean, I think it's just, just kind of having the propensity to not be average, and not thinking too small, and just thinking a bit differently, and being current, especially for a young person. When you're competing against the old 60-year-old dentist, doesn't have to be the most popular dentist in town. I think is very important for youngsters to understand. You can quite quickly supersede and be beyond someone like that, because I'd rather go to a young dentist who's kind of just learned the tricks of the trade and is keeping up with everything modern. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for young dentists, and I wouldn't get discouraged. I would.
And
I would
you're
just,
still excited about South Africa. You're happy if you're a young dentist, would you stick around and not go to the zoo like we spoke about earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I think being in a sort of a first world country is I think it's reasonably unexciting, and I think the opportunities are much smaller. It's maybe more stable, but I think there's more you can do in a very diverse culture here, and experimenting and doing a lot of things to progress your business is cheaper and easier to do here. So I mean, I wouldn't get discouraged. I think dentistry is going to be here. While there's teeth to look after, there'll be work for dentists. It's just about how well you do it, and how strong your spirit is to do things efficiently.
Awesome, Philly. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. Listen, we're gonna wrap it up. I would ask Phil. You don't have to go. If you want to go, you're welcome. But you don't have to go. We'll keep you online. But I'm gonna ask Bernard. Bernie was supposed to talk to us about estate planning and stuff, but we're going to do a separate podcast for that. I think Bernie is like super intelligent and it might talk for a long time, and dentist attention span is like 30 minutes, so we double that already. So me and Bernie is going to jump on another time to do a proper podcast, but I want to have some wisdom from Bernie before we go. He's been awfully quiet. So before we say goodbye, Bernie, what advice have you got for young dentists out there in the wilderness?
Geez, be confident. I mean, you obviously chose vocation. Flip and smash it. I mean, gaan voluit. I mean, I can't think of anything more noble than actually sticking to what you do. And if you've got the capacity to obviously go through those years of studies, qualifications, you're adding a significant service, and that's something that's valuable. And I don't think there's anything more personal than really visiting your dentist, really, if you think about it. The amount of stories that you've told me gives me a lot of encouragement, because you get to speak to a lot of people in person that gives you so much more drive. And I can just attest from my chats with you that it's actually a fantastic space to be in, and in that sense, kudos.
Dav, advice, last parting words?
No, I think just to add to what Phil said is to think big and to think critically and differently. Critical thinking is a very important thing. Don't think because everyone did things the same way for 60 years, you should do it in that same way. And I think with globalization and the skills we have in South Africa, the quality skills in terms of dentistry, there's no reason why pretty soon with technology you won't be able to service people in LA or New York or London. So, think of the possibilities out there, but think big and think different.
Philly and Yo, your last words?
No, I mean, I echo what everyone has said. I think, I think we've all been given unique talents, and it's about really using them and finding your uniqueness and kind of getting closer to what your purpose is and what you're meant to do, and just kind of being sincere and having focus and trying to make the most of the opportunity. I think it's exciting. I think there's plenty of opportunity. I think there's enough coffee drinkers in the world to service peace for another few millennia.
That's true. Thanks, Philly. You must have a lucky evening. What's your plans for tomorrow?
No, not much. I'll be reading and trying to put in some focus time.
Focus on what?
Just figuring out the world.
One day at a time. Okay, dude, have a lucky evening. We'll chat to you soon.
Philly, just go.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, bye.
Okay, cool. We're gonna wrap it up then. Is there anything else you guys wanna add before the wine is finished?
I wanted to ask you. I'm curious. The fraternity. Are there in South Africa a lot of dentists for the demand, or not so much?
No, I think there's not enough dentists for the demand, but there's also. I try and figure it out because there's like a weird space because all the older toppies are retiring now, and like Shayne mentioned, there's a lot of young women in the business, and then they've got different needs. So like Shayne said, they want to have kids and they've got young families, so the scenery is changing a lot, and you get a lot of younger, like my wife for instance, she marries and she gets kids and she doesn't want to work. So a lot of women ends up either not in the industry anymore, or they end up working half days or working less or going into specialization. So I think there's less general dentists doing the all-round work, and there's more specialists. Like women tend to go into specialization or tend to work half days, tend to work less. So I think the demand there's a big demand for dentists, and then on the other side you got guys going abroad and moving overseas. So I think being a dentist is not a bad place to be in, but we need to sort the industry out. We need to figure out where we're going, because the medical aids are not paying enough and the dentists are not earning enough, so they want to work for the government, and it's a little bit skew at the moment. So if you're a dentist, I would say you're going to be more in demand now than you would be a couple of years ago, and going forward it's going to not change. I think it's going to get dentists are going to be more rare than you expect.
And is there any big misconception that you want to clarify when it comes to dentistry or being a dentist? So, for example, something that you believe to be true, which most people don't think to be true, or other way around?
I think so. I think dentistry are well accepted, and I think people, like everyone hates going to the dentist. Obviously, that's the first thing they say, I hate coming to you. But I always find it's a lucky experience. People tend to like mellow up towards you. So you guys, Dav came and his wife Lindy came to me today for dental work, and it's a intimidating space because you're in someone's mouth. But I think if you do it right and you approach it right and you have got the right attitude and you don't take yourself too serious, I don't think people like going to a doctor that's like a little know-it-all and you want to tell you everything. You want to go to someone that you can relate to, you can have fun with, you can talk to, and you can make a joke with, and you end up leaving as friends and not as a doctor-patient relationship. I think that's what makes me enjoy my work, is making friends and kind of seeing the lighter side of it and not just being all serious. Dentistry is not that serious. You pull a tooth at the end of the day if you don't want it, but it's not a life and death kind of thing. So you can lighten it up a little bit more than like being your dad, for instance, where it's a life and death kind of thing. So that's what I enjoy about dentistry. Don't take it too seriously. You don't have to. And if you don't take it seriously, people kind of relax. And then the misconception about going to the dentist being so bad is actually then not so bad.
Yeah.
It's actually more fun. So yeah, I think I think that's it. Let's wrap it up. Dav, thanks for your time.
Thanks you.
Dav's going to drive 1,000 k's tomorrow. Thanks for your time. Me and Bernie is going to surf tomorrow. Big swell on the way. Unfortunately, Dav has to leave. Right?
Just when he started surfing.
Let's quit. Let's stop while we're here.